Call this meeting to order. This is the 150th meeting of the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration, and pursuant to Standing Order 1082, we are continuing our study of settlement services across Canada. And I thank the witnesses for coming, and I apologize for our late start today due to the vote that we had in the House of Commons. So we now have quorum so we can begin the meeting. Our first my hope is that we can go a little bit long on the meeting today to make sure we hear from all the witnesses, and but we won't go overboard. So we'll see how the questions. But I don't want to cut down the presentations, and we're going to begin. I think we usually begin with the teleconference or the video conference. Presentation, just for the committee to know that the theme of this first hour are settlement services, which are provided by non-traditional providers of activities and organizations which deal with newcomers but aren't necessarily settlement service agencies that we have. Thank you, and welcome Ms. Hutchings as a member of the committee today, et aussi Madame Lavadière, bienvenue aussi. C'est un grand comité d'avoir.
Welcome as well. It's wonderful to have you with us at committee.
In California. You may begin your presentation. Can you hear us?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, and we can hear you.
Good. Well, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Fred Roberts, and I am the president of the Frederick Roberts Foundation, which funds and operates the Frederick Roberts Photography Workshops. In March of 2000, after more than 30 years in the finance business, I retired. Not knowing how I would spend the rest of my life, I recalled the positive reaction to some photographs I had taken in 1986 on an extended trip to Asia. Although I had not touched a camera in over 14 years, I decided to take some photography workshops to see if I were actually any good. 4 years later, I was approached by a prominent art gallery to do an exhibit and a publisher to do a book, which won several awards. This was followed by 2 more books and more gallery shows, more awards, and several museum exhibits. My photographs are primarily environmental portraits of villagers in third world countries who have very rich lives that are not defined by monetary wealth. I love my new work. I love the message, and I love the process of traveling the world and being with these people. Strangely, though, after about 10 years, I felt less fulfilled. Then in 2011, I set up what has become my new life, a series of photographic workshops for third world high school students. This program is patterned after another initiative, which I built in Los Angeles for high school students gifted in the arts, the Music Center Spotlight Awards. Spotlight is now 30 years old and has had more than 70,000 participants whose lives have been changed by the program. The photography workshops are far smaller and more intimate, but no less powerful. To build the photography workshops, I recruited a remarkable and unique faculty, created a curriculum, purchased professional level cameras and computers, and established relationships with NGOs around the world. In partnership with these NGOs, we offer an 8-day workshop of professional level photography instruction to 20 students at a time, ages 14 to 17, half boys and half girls, half city and half rural, who have never before touched a camera. In addition to teaching them how to use these cameras exclusively on manual mode, we teach them to tell important stories in their communities. It gives them a voice and permanently empowers them. At the conclusion of each workshop, we leave behind cameras and software so the students can continue their work. In addition, we have created an online community for them to receive assignments and to submit their photos for further education. We then return within 18 to 24 months to give advanced training to previous students and have them join us as teaching assistants as we instruct a new class of 20 beginners. They go on to become teachers, photographers, photojournalists, social activists, doctors, lawyers, whatever they want, now armed with a new skill and a new language. And their work is really quite remarkable, as I think you will soon see. While these workshops are nominally about photography, they're actually about far more. They're about self-expression, self-fulfillment, self-confidence, empowerment, vision, and a profound sense of accomplishment, often for the first time in their lives. Superficially, the students learn the skill of photography. At the very least, it's a form of vocational training, but it is far more. The fact that the students create both art and powerful messages, giving them the ability to see the world in new ways and to create real social change, comes from within them. We use photography as a catalyst to help them open their minds and release their genies. As I often tell students on the first day of the workshops, this is not an art class. To the point of this committee, we have recently conducted workshops in first world settings, specifically in Lisbon and Toronto, and soon in Athens, teaching students who are recent immigrants and refugees. They have come from such locations as Syria, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, and African nations, among others. Similar to our traditional workshops, the students often don't speak English, and we teach them through translators. The results are remarkable. The changes in our students are profound. While it is critical to give new arrivals the basic skills they need to survive, I believe that we also need to give them the foundation for a higher vision of life. Not just survival, but a sense of creative freedom and the confidence to change their communities and the world. It lights their way to a better path and a better future. Can it be done? Will the efforts of a small organization like ours or a powerful government like yours actually change the outcomes for these young people? Well, I'd now like to show you an example of actual results. The images you are about to see, a short piece of photojournalism shot in Toronto, were photographed by our students. These are their ideas and their images. And I want you to remember, as you see their work, that this is the result of less than 1 week of instruction to young people who had never before touched a camera. Thank you.
की सांसों में उलझी है कोई बात अनकही सी रात की सांसों में उलझी है कोई बात अनकही सी पलकों पे अपनी सजा लो ना मुलाकात अनकही सी अनकही सी ना कर तो देखो तेरे मेरे हाथों से ना फिसल जाए रात अनकही सी अनकही सी आज भर दे बर्फ में भी ऐसी छुअन मेरे तन की बोले बिना भी जानती हूँ बातें मैं तेरे मन की आज भर दे बर्फ में भी ऐसी छुअन मेरे तन की भूले बिना भी जानती हूँ बातें मैं तेरे मन की चोरी चोरी चुपके से
Thank you very much. And stay tuned. You're going to probably get some questions about what you do and why you do it. And we're going now to our second witnesses from the Boys and Girls Clubs of Canada, Colleen Mooney and Henna Izzadin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whoops, I guess I'm on. Mr. Chair, honorable members, committee, and staff, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today and contribute to this important study on settlement services across Canada. Community-based services, positive relationships, and life-changing programs. As Canada's largest child and youth-serving organization, Boys and Girls Clubs provide vital programs and services to over 200,000 young people in 700 communities across Canada. During critical out-of-school hours, our clubs help young people develop into healthy, active, and engaged adults. Our trained staff and volunteers give youth the tools they need to realize positive outcomes in self-expression, academics, healthy living, physical activity, mental health, leadership, and more. Since 1900, Boys and Girls Clubs have opened their doors to children, youth, and families in small and large cities and in rural and northern communities. Here in Ottawa, we were founded, I'm the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa, but I'm here speaking on behalf of Boys and Girls Club of Canada. But here in Ottawa, we first opened our doors in 1923, so we're looking forward to celebrating our 100th anniversary very soon. If a young person needs it, our clubs can provide it. Our clubs welcome diversity, serving over 12,000 newcomer youth and over 14,000 children and youth last year alone for whom English is a second language. The Canadian Council for Refugees describes the refugee process as a continuum, beginning with settlement services and ending and concluding with integration. Our work here in Ottawa and across the country focuses on ensuring young people feel a sense of belonging by helping children and youth adapt, giving them the opportunity to improve or acquire language skills, and giving them a sense of community. As families settle, clubs help with full integration and a feeling of belonging. Today, we want to highlight a few points specifically related to the challenges facing immigrant youth trying to integrate into Canadian society. I have a young youth with me today, Henna Izzadin, who's a member of the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa, who will speak to you shortly about her experience. According to the UN High Commission on Human Rights, youth who arrive as refugees tend to have experienced trauma and display a higher than average rates of post-traumatic stress disorder. Young people have often seen their schooling disrupted, or many have not had access to formal schooling at all or in many years. When these young people arrive in Canada, they are facing these additional barriers on top of all the issues that other Canadian youth face, including feelings of isolation, mental health challenges, and bullying. Our recommendation to this committee is that government should invest in programs that support the successful integration of youth, starting with youth for whom immigration integration will be the most challenging. Thank you for providing this setting where Hannah can share her lived experience as a recent immigrant to Canada. And I'm going to let Hannah continue at this point.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Hannah, for who didn't hear it. I am 18 years old and I am from Syria. I came to Canada 3 years ago. My mom used to work as a farmer in Syria. My dad worked as a train conductor and electrician. But my siblings and my aspiration was to study, do well, and exceed in school. We left Syria to Turkey and applied to migrate to Canada. I will never forget the first moments in Toronto's airport. That moment when we arrived, we found the people waiting for us with a big smile on their faces. We spent 3 days in Toronto and then we came to Ottawa. The first year in Ottawa was very hard for me because I had very small amount of English words. In the first and second year, me and my family focused on learning English as soon as we could. There were interpreters that translated information into Arabic, which is my first language, but we wanted to learn English because it's needed to continue our education and to work here. In my first year of school, I started learning English in ESL classes, which is English as a second language. But now I am in a regular English class. In the second year, I started learning French, even when my English was not good enough, but still wanted to learn. Third year, I continued learning English, French, and my other subjects. I have done so many activities with others, such as joining the Forum for Young Canadians. So I have represented the Minister of Finance. Also, I have joined a group of Syrian girls to do paintings and sell them under the Humans for Peace Institute. After that, we have sold the paintings and we donated the money to the blood center. So then, I have donated blood to the blood center, also under the Humans for Peace Institute. These activities helped me develop my speaking skills, and the most place that helped me to develop my speaking skills was the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa. First, I started going there as a member of their community. After that, I started working as a volunteer, and I have been volunteering there for 2 years to present. Third, I have started a program that's called Leaders for Life, which was also one of the most helpful activity every Monday to develop my English. When I was a small girl, I always dreamed of being a neurosurgeon. When I was in Syria, I didn't really think that my dream would become true for many reasons. But when I came to Canada, I found out that my childhood dream could still come. So now I am very determined to become a neurosurgeon, and I know that if I work hard that I will reach my dream, because I never believe in something is called impossible in Canada. I am so thankful for Canadian government and its people, and for the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa. I'm so grateful to be in Canada, but it has been a challenge for myself and others with the trying to figure out how everything works in Canada, papers, customs, just to name a few. I can see why some other immigrants have a harder time. Me and my family made family decisions and were not afraid to ask people we met for help. This is not easy for everyone to do if they don't work hard. Thank you.
And I'm just going to finish up shortly. So Canada's immigration plan is focused on families, and Boys and Girls Clubs across the country help facilitate successful integration for children and youth, as well as supporting parents. Clubs across the country have welcomed refugees to their communities, integrating children into regular after-school programs, as Henna described. Clubs also work in conjunction with local settlement agencies and local immigrant organizations to support newcomer children and youth across club programs. Our universal approach to services ensures that everybody is welcome at the club. No one is turned away from our programs due to financial barriers. In addition, we run specific programs for newcomers, such as our Newcomer Youth Advancement Program. This program runs in clubs across the country, supports the healthy development of newcomer youth, and assists their family in building strong social and community connections. Acting as a launch pad for youth to build skills, develop friendships, and support networks and gain self-confidence, this program offers academic engagement, help finding employment, leadership development, and civic engagement, recreational sports, and more. Investing in newcomer youth when they arrive is a more effective and less expensive way to encourage successful integration than implementing reactive measures to address negative behaviors of youth who are disconnected from their communities. We encourage the government to give some thought to how existing programs, such as those in the Youth Employment Strategy or the Canada Service Corps, can be bolstered to better engage newcomer youth. Such programs foster connections between youth and their new communities and help them gain language and cultural knowledge they need to succeed. Anti-discrimination programs that foster connections between refugees and the receiving population, such as community engagement and recreational activities, can be further promoted and facilitated. Thank you again for inviting Henna and myself to speak, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you et merci encore, Henna, pour apprendre le français.
And thank you also, Henna. Henna also speaks French.
With New Circles Community Services, who's going to begin, Ms. Smythe?
Yes, I'll start. So first of all, thank you all very much for this opportunity. My name is Rosie Smythe, and I'm the Executive Director of New Circles Community Services in Toronto. And I'm here with Diana Gibbs, and she's our Development Manager. So New Circles was founded in 2005 by a social worker by the name of Cindy Blakely. When she saw students whose basic needs were not being met and not able to focus in class, she was led to start New Circles Community Services to provide free clothing to those in need. It began in Flemington Park, one of Toronto's highest needs neighborhoods with large numbers of low-income households. Over time, New Circles has steadily grown, and today we offer a range of programs, including social groups, settlement support, and employment training, in addition to the clothing. We now focus on 5 high-needs neighborhoods in mid-Toronto, including Thorncliffe Park, which is known across Canada as the launching pad for new arrivals. These neighborhoods make up our catchment area of about 88,000 people, and child poverty rates are among the highest in Canada. The majority of the residents are immigrants, most having arrived within the past 5 years. As you know, poverty and unemployment rates for newcomers are among the highest in the overall population. We may not have started as a settlement agency, but we have increasingly focused on supporting the needs of new immigrants, who are among the most vulnerable in our city. How do we do this? We now run the largest clothing bank in Toronto. It's called Glow, Gently Loved Outfits to Wear. We serve 15,000 individuals a year, and about 75% of those are newcomers. Our catchment group also includes Syrian and government-sponsored refugees in Toronto. We are often the first stop for refugees, but we also are available to others, anyone in need of clothing. We created a unique and innovative design when we moved to a larger space in 2015, and we set it up to simulate a real store. We now use it as a platform for our clients to develop employable skills. Our primary users are low-income immigrant women with challenges in finding paid work. That is lack of Canadian credentials, experience in social networks, as well as uncertainty about how and where to look for jobs. To address these barriers, we developed 2 training programs. The first focuses on retail sales and customer service skills in partnership with the Retail Council of Canada. And this supportive setting, the store setting, it's very supportive, and it helps them to understand employer expectations and learn soft skills. We also launched an office skills training program in partnership with Centennial College. That teaches digital literacy, business communication, and office administration with a work placement as part of the program. We enroll 70 women annually in this training, and I'm very proud to say that within 6 months, 70% of our grads are finding employment or enroll in further training. We also run social support groups, we have volunteer opportunities, and a settlement case management program. GLOW has become a natural gateway to introduce newcomers not only to these programs, but also to refer folks to a range of settlement services that are offered in the community. So I'll turn it over to Diana now, and she can explain further.
Yes, and I wanted to speak about the Gateway model, which is really best described through the story of Olu, who's a young, very determined single mother who fled Nigeria due to domestic violence and arrived as a refugee. She was struggling alone with 2 small children, one of whom was severely disabled, and she came to New Circles for clothing. She heard about New Circles when she was shopping in Value Village and met up with a friend of hers who told her where she could get free clothing. And she came to us for clothing, and then she began volunteering when she met people there who welcomed her. And subsequently, she heard about and then enrolled in our retail training program. And after she graduated, she was able to leverage that to get employment at Lowe's Home Improvement store, where she still works today, not far from where I live, and I often run into her when she's on her shifts, which is always nice. By coming for clothing, GLOW served as a gateway for Olu to break down her isolation, build a social network, gain Canadian experience and credentials through her placement in GLOW, get references, register with an employment office, and then break into the labor force. And one of the strengths of this gateway model is that clients maintain consistent relationships within our agency. They see the same staff and volunteers in GLOW, which is largely staffed by volunteers who may either be clients or established Canadians, so there's a lot of integration there. And they see the same people whether they're shopping for clothing, volunteering, or doing their placement as part of the Retail Skills Training Program. And this helps build trusts, and when we are referring and suggesting other programs, either within New Circles or out in the community, there's more openness to hear and to see how this may be relevant to them. And clients often tell us, and our graduates too, that they feel like they have found a second family at New Circles. Another key strength of our model is accessibility. Everyone is welcome to walk through and enter the GLOW gateway. And while many of our users are new to Canada, their status ranges from temporary worker, refugee claimant, permanent residents, and citizens. And it also means that among our clients and volunteers, we have a diverse community of cultural and social backgrounds. I like to think of it as a mini UN. We had 160 different countries being served through our client base. And this does help break down silos and build community connections. We're going to speak today that one of our greatest challenges, though, is financial sustainability. We are a young organization that was founded by someone, and we are largely funded through the philanthropic community. Currently, we have to raise 85% of our annual budget from private sector donations and grants, and this happens year after year. So we are hopeful that we can form a partnership with the federal government and join the network of IRCC-funded service providers to continue the work on a more sustainable footing. We are currently participating in the recent call for proposals, and we're especially encouraged by the pilot initiative to support the success of visible minority newcomer women to join the labor force, which is an area that we are focused on, and in particular the invitation to new agencies to apply, and we certainly felt very welcome to participate in that process. However, we did note that the 12-month funding period for this pilot initiative does limit what it is possible to achieve in such a short time. So that was a limitation in terms of what we could propose. We also feel it could be helpful if the funding allowed service providers to work with people before and after their permanent resident status. In our experience, in particular, we see a particular need for immigrant women who have spent their initial years in Canada after arrival, focused on their family responsibilities before looking for work. They come to us now ready to join the labor force and face the same barriers as someone who may have just arrived. Language capacity, lack of Canadian experience, current skills, and social networks. But as Canadian citizens, they are not eligible for this type of funding, although they have exactly the same potential to make the positive contribution that newcomers women have with support from us. So we wanted to raise a couple of those points, and thank you again for the opportunity to tell you about New Circles. We'd be happy to answer any questions and hope that maybe our model might be one that could be replicated in other urban centres in Canada to contribute to the successful settlements of immigrants. Thank you.
Thank you to all the witnesses from three very different kinds of perspectives about non-traditional settlement services and opening our minds to it. I'm just going to check with the committee about timing. My proposal is, instead of doing a 7-minute round, we try a 5-minute round. We have 4 questions, and then we can cut the difference and try to end just about 10 minutes late. Would people be agreed to that? Okay, so that's unanimous. Mr. Sarai for 5 minutes.
First of all, thank Hannah. It's always great to see somebody who came here for a new hope and somebody young, and seeing them happier and getting a warm welcome and succeeding in your life. And all I can say on behalf of all of us, that the doors are wide open for you in Canada, and I think your opportunities will be really great. As to the Boys and Girls Club, I have a great Boys and Girls Club in Surrey, and particularly in my riding. They help a lot of young folks with summer and summer programs, after school programs, and I visit them from time to time. And I notice that the students are quite mixed. You have inner city youth, you have people who've been living for generations in Canada, to first and second generation immigrant kids, to now refugees as well. How has Boys and Girls Club, this question is for Ms. Mooney, how have you adjusted and readjusted as different fluxes of immigrants have come in, and how have your services catered towards them?
I think, and I have visited the clubhouse that you're referring to, and it is a wonderful spot. I think Boys and Girls Club, our mission is and vision is that we're open to everybody and providing the services for everybody at no cost or low cost. For example, at the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa, all of our programs are free of charge. We don't charge anything. So we try to eliminate any barriers. And so that's often an issue for newcomers is financial. And I think, we try to work. And I was asking Hannah on the way here how she found her way to the Boys and Girls Club. And she was saying that one of her younger siblings' teachers referred them to the Boys and Girls Club. So I think, it's working with the schools, working with the school boards as they adjust to different waves of immigrants, and trying to integrate. We take that very seriously at Boys and Girls Club of Canada, and I can speak for Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa. We think that's a really important function, is integrating newcomer youth into Canadian society. In fact, many parents will tell me that they've sent their kids to the Boys and Girls Club to learn how to be Canadian, which I think is a really great compliment and something that we take really seriously.
Oh, thank you. My next question is Ms. Smythe. has New Circles, have you helped women with getting, say, business and or workplace attire, similar to some charities in Vancouver that have helped men who are looking for employment and coming from homelessness to or being off the street and now needing, say, a business suit and a tie to do their first interview and helping them with resume skills or interview skills? Do you do similar types of work in terms of clothing and adjusting them, some of these newcomers to their first employment opportunities?
Absolutely. That's probably a big part of what we do,
Okay.
especially when people first come to us, and we provide for the whole family for a few years. And yeah, that's a big part of what we're doing, is really trying to help people to integrate and settle with the right attire. Many people aren't able to come with especially winter clothing.
Yes.
So a lot of people come with one suitcase, and so we help them to. We can see it as something really important in someone's settlement, is to be able to dress the way that they feel and to dress for job interviews, and also dress like other Canadians. That's what a lot of people coming in, that's what they want to do. They want to be part of Canadian society with Canadian dress, or they're also with cultural dress as well. It's really up to the people.
Sure. And what specific needs do youth specifically have when they come to Canada as refugees or immigrants? And what are those, in your experience, are these needs adequately attended to from your settlement service agency or those that are around in your area?
Yes, because when we do our intake, that's a big part of when we first see people. We also have staff that can also go into the store and meet with people and make sure that we make it a big part of what we're doing, that we make sure that all of our participants or our clients coming in understand that we're not just about the clothes, that we can also provide one-on-one case management settlement services. We do have a worker that does that. And then we have 2 different employment programs, and we're looking to expand on that as well. And we do that in partnership with other organizations. So if there's other needs, we can then encourage people or refer people to other community services as well.
I'm afraid I need to end you there. Mr. Tilson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Roberts, you certainly have a unique approach, which we're interested in this committee. How do you assess the success of your own programs?
I'm sorry.
How do you assess?
Asking me or?
Yes, Mr. Roberts, I'm asking you.
Well, right now it's more or less just looking at the population afterwards and watching individually their transformation. If we have one great need, it's to have a more studied analysis of outcomes. And we are now talking to a Yale campus in Singapore to have them follow our program and track the outcomes of the students on a more comprehensive basis and more scientifically done. But the feedback that we get specifically from our NGO partners is that the students have all been profoundly changed. And in many cases, we see as an example that those who would not have graduated from high school do, those who would not have gone on to college do, and many of them have gone on to careers unrelated to photography, medical school as an example. So it's all not quite scientific at the moment, but we're hoping to solve that problem.
Thank you. Ms. Smythe, there's evidence from the IRCC and from newcomers themselves that language training is failing large numbers of people, particularly those lacking in language or literacy skills. Mm-hmm. So my question is, do you have any thoughts as to what's behind this and what can we do to improve the success of newcomers?
Well, what we see, and I'll let Diana answer as well, is we see people that want to learn and need to learn very specific skills. So, for example, in our business program, we offer a language skills program that focuses on business skills. And I think that's what we have, if you read any of the reports put out by the LIPS, the different integrated partnership programs, that's what they found, is that it's too widespread, the way that languages are taught right now. And what they're trying to do is recommend that we do more specific related to what people are enrolled in. So we also have a really excellent program that we're in partnership, and they help people it's called the Stories of Us, and I think they're funded by the IRCC, and it's a really great program, and they come in and we just started working with them, and they teach people language skills by telling their story, and they can tell their story in their own language and then have it interpreted in English. And that kind of thing is really seemed to be working much better than traditional.
Thank you. Ms. Gibbs, you talked about women, and I'd like to ask you a question, particularly about women who remain at home, who look after children and look after seniors, seem to have difficulty getting their language skills up to the required level of proficiency for citizenship. You've given some suggestions, recommendations to the committee as to what we should do, but do you have other suggestions or recommendations as to how we can improve the outcomes of this particular group, women in particular?
My sense would be in terms of social integration, reaching out to them to connect socially into their community. That's the need that we have seen as opposed to pre-economic attachment to the labor force. I think that an integrated, we have run groups, for example, that bring women forward to mix with other people where the common language will be English, as opposed to perhaps going to a cultural center where the language still.
Do you have
remains
recommendations
the same.
as to what the government should do?
Well, support those kinds of programs, I suppose. But
Funding,
no, I
money.
don't particularly. Well, money, sure. Isn't everything comes down to money?
It does indeed.
But it's a question of where you're going to put your money. And that would be the recommendation.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. On va continuer avec Madame.
Thank you very much, Madame Laverdière. You've got 5 minutes. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank all of you for those very interesting presentations today. And Hannah, I'd like to congratulate you for learning to speak French as well as for her involvement in her community. It's wonderful. Congratulations. My first question is addressed to Ms. Gibbs, who mentioned, can you hear me? Can you hear the interpretation? Not at this time. I don't hear the I understand you, but I'm not hearing the interpreter.
Okay.
You mentioned the inherent difficulties in experimental programs that you applied, given the time limits.
Purpose. Okay, so you did mention this experimental program, this new program. I can't remember how to say it in English, and with this time limit of 12 months and the difficulties it presents to you. Could you detail, more, explain a bit more what kind of challenges that time frame poses for you?
Yes. Well, we are hoping in particular to partner around our employment training programs for immigrant women, newcomer women, visible minority in particular. And we wanted to participate in this program, but it wasn't possible to put in our budget. What we did with this proposal, which I hope will be successful, is to supplement with some additional enrichment to our base program, but we couldn't put in for our base program operating budget because with 1 year of funding, we can't really, and it starts now, we've already got that funding in place. So that was the type of challenge we had with this particular call for proposals. So it was to enrich the program, which we can certainly use that enrichment by increasing, in particular, our relationships with employers. That's what we want to do. But again, we'll only have 1 year to do it. So, and it does take a while to build relationships. So that's the type of challenge, but we're happy to accept it.
OK.
Faut que j'arrête juste pour un instant de vérifier l'interprétation. C'est absolument.
I'd just like to check out and make sure that everyone can hear the interpretation. It's absolutely essential that the committee be able to operate in both languages.
Okay.
Yes, we know that the capacity to predict, the ability to predict and make provisions is absolutely essential to do good work. Perhaps to the other two, and I'll come back to the Scouts and Canadian Guides. Do you offer daycare services or childcare services for women who come to you for training?
We do is our training. We have two types of training. One, the retail skills training is planned so that women can either drop their children at school or take them to daycare. So it runs a short time during the middle of the day, which is intentional for women when they have these free times, because we do want people to use the other services that are available in the community. So that's how we try to be flexible, so that when women have, we organize the training around the availability of our clients.
OK. Merci beaucoup. Madame Mounet,
Thank you. Ms. Mooney, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. I was wondering, you receive 12,000 young newcomers per year. So I have two questions about that. First of all, are there many refugees amongst these newcomers? And are you making special efforts to attract those young people? Because I agree with you, it is a type of prevention, integrating women and young people and children, and that's much more effective than intervening after the fact. I understood your question, but I would like to answer in English if that's all right.
Point of clarification.
No problem.
Boys and Girls Clubs, Repère Jeunesse d'Ottawa, or du Canada, not necessarily Scouts and Guides. So I just wanted to clarify that. Very different. So, sorry, I'm just trying to remember your question now.
la proportion de...
It was about the proportion of refugees amongst the groups of newcomers, and also what you're doing in terms of outreach to attract newcomers.
A lot of refugees, and over the years it's been different waves. In the last sort of over 10 years, maybe a lot of Somali refugees from different parts of Africa, many, especially in our urban clubs across the country, and most recently a lot of Syrian youth, I would say, again, in our major urban centers across the country. And we do actually do a lot of outreach. We work very carefully or very closely with the schools, because I think the schools are trying very hard, English as a second language classes, but honestly, they're overwhelmed, because it's different when you come to this country and you're in grade 1 and, you're learning quickly and it's your first time in school. It's different. What we find is when youth come, someone like Hannah, who came, only about 3.5 years ago, all of a sudden you're thrust into high school. It's, challenging enough for most kids, high school, but they don't know the language. They're learning so much is new. And so we work very closely with the schools in conjunction. We run, actually here in Ottawa, 2 of our clubhouses are located in schools that are in particular areas, marginalized neighborhoods that attract large numbers of refugees and immigrants. And
Je m'excuse, mais il faut que j'arrête ici maintenant. On va continuer avec Monsieur.
I'm very sorry, I have to stop you there. So we're going to continue with Mr. Ayoub. Please go ahead. Thank you, Chair.
The question is going to be in French, most of it. You can answer it in English, there is no problem.
Since coming from a Quebec MP, and in fact, my family is Syrian. I was born in Syria, and I understand Hannah's story, and it's wonderful to see the hope and all the work that's been done to welcome newcomers, and it's the best testimony we can see. The work you do is very important, and Hannah's testimony was very refreshing and comforting. It's comforting to know that things are being done a certain way and that it's good work. My question is for Hannah. In the services you've received over the last 3.5 years that you've been in Canada, what did you think was good and what would you have done differently? Not to say that it wasn't good, but what would you have done differently? How could you improve the services that were offered to you and your family? You received services through Ms. Moody, and I believe your family may have received other services from other groups. And what do you think of all of those?
So the ESL classes was the best thing that helped me as a service at school, I would say. And I can't really.
What would have helped your family more? What kind of things would?
Would it be the language that would be the first thing that you gain as a service, and that was the most important for you to be included, to make some new friends, and to participate in life in Canada? Would it be the first thing that was the most important for you?
I speak English.
Oh yeah, you can speak in English too.
If I would speak in English, like the life would be way easier. The school, even my dad was a train conductor and an electrician, so he would have worked, but he's not working now because he's still in school. So my mom too. So if we would have speak English, we could have like done many things. Maybe now I could have like graduated from high school, but now I can't until next year because I'm not done with my subjects yet because I'm still learning. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, one thing that Hannah mentioned to me on the way here was the number of forms that her family had to fill out on, multiple different things from the government. And that was very challenging for her family because they were in English or French, and a lot of them were not available in other languages. And so then that puts a lot of burden, something we see a lot at the Boys and Girls Club. It puts the burden on someone like Hannah, who's to be the translator and taking on a lot of family responsibility, far beyond her years.
Oui, je comprends. De votre côté.
I understand. Ms. Mooney, what about the services that you offer? You talked about schools, but what interactions do you have? What can the government do to further improve the services that you offer and improve the uniformity between the services offered by the school and the non-conventional services? And I could ask the same question of Ms. Smythe, in fact. Bien.
Across the country, we don't receive very much money from the federal government for the services that we do provide, which we think are pretty essential. We put a lot of emphasis on education. So, across the country, we have scholarships. We run homework clubs in all of our clubs, and after school programs, leadership programs, and those are really key, I think, as part of the integration and helping kids finish high school and move on to be productive, tax-paying members of society, and also putting a lot of emphasis on good citizenship and giving back and what it means to be a good citizen.
Madam Smith, you have?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
The same question, I mean.
Yes, I would say the same thing. The service you were asking about what we would need to be able to do even a better job than what we're doing now.
Yes. What is your need, and what's lacking right now?
Well,
What's the
most
bid-
definitely, it really has to go back to funding and government funding, especially in the programs that we offer, because we depend on private donors, and that can be very, very difficult to function.
What kind of service that you would be able to give that you're not giving right now with new funding?
I think what we would like to do is offer more of an array of services, because right now we are providing both a retail program and a business program, and both of those require a pretty high level of English. And if we were able to provide other services or other employment programs that were where we could, if somebody with lower language skills could still participate and then perhaps move up into better employment. But that's something we'd really like to
think my time is
do.
up.
I'm afraid I need to end this panel here. I feel like we just started. The committee will consider, obviously, your testimony today, but also if you have anything else you would like to send the committee in writing, especially in terms of recommendations on pushing new ideas towards settlement services that may not be, because you're all non-traditional suppliers of or providers of these things from very different perspectives. If you have anything else in writing you'd like to submit to the committee, we would very much appreciate it. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry that we were shorter on our questions than normal. We're going to suspend for just a few minutes while we change the witnesses to the next panel. Thank you very much. Reconvene and hear from our next panel. I think we're going to begin with Ms. Reimer from Edmonton because you are coming to us via video conference. So just in case we have a problem, I like to start with you, and then we can fix it later if we need to, and then we'll hear from the witnesses who are in the room. So take it away. Can you hear me?
Oh, are you asking me now? Okay,
Yes.
I didn't hear you start. So
Yeah. So this is your time now to make your opening remarks.
okay, well, thank you, and good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you on Treaty 6 territory, and that the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters work in communities in Treaty 6, 7, and 8. Your request is timely, as this issue has been weighing heavily upon women's shelters in our province, and indeed across the country. Women's Shelters Canada will be hosting shelters from across Canada in late May, with a focus on navigating immigration systems and access to services with immigrant and refugee survivors of violence against women. And in Alberta, just 2 weeks ago, we launched a campaign in response to the New Zealand massacre, Alberta Kind, as we felt we could no longer stand on the sidelines to bear witness to the crescendo of racism, hate crimes, and violence directed towards Muslims, and the anti-immigration sentiment in general that has been increasingly expressed. This is directly related to settlement issues, as racism is a barrier to employment, housing, and feeling safe in your community. Women and families should feel safe to worship in mosques in Canada, and often they do not. One of the beauties of Canada is how people of many lands have come together to forge a shared identity, that we can practice different faiths or none, yet share respect of our laws and our country. We know we need strong national action on this, and we know that it is a responsibility for each and every one of us. The Alberta Council of Women's Shelters supports 37 members from across the country, across the province, and these members provide a range of services to women, children, and seniors facing abuse through emergency shelters, second stage shelters, and senior shelters to provide a safe haven. In the last 3 years, members in Alberta have provided shelter to more than 30,000 women, children, and seniors, and provided outreach services to more than 17,000, while at the same time turning away more than 47,000 women, children, and seniors due to a lack of capacity in our system. In Alberta, shelters work with women who use a tool called the Danger Assessment, developed by Dr. Jacqueline Campbell, Johns Hopkins University, which helps assess the likelihood of being murdered by an intimate partner to better appreciate her level of danger and inform safety planning. Research shows the Danger Assessment has the highest predictive validity of all actuarial risk assessments researched to date. Danger assessment scores show that almost 2/3 of the women who complete the assessment are in severe or high risk of being killed, and definitely require the safety and supports provided by women's shelters. Women are in this category because, in part, they are being threatened with a gun or being subjected to strangulation. We are hoping to work with Dr. Campbell on fine-tuning the DA specifically for immigrant populations, and Women and Gender Equality has given us the green light to develop a concept paper on this. I had the opportunity to consult with ACWS members in advance of this meeting, and my comments today reflect the views of our membership, rooted in many years of experience providing support to immigrant women, as well as our Safety from Domestic Violence initiative, which outlines evidence-based and promising practices with respect to women's safety. In general, members of the committee, in many ways, but certainly not all, the experience of an immigrant woman facing abuse is similar to most women. What I mean by that is every woman who faces abuse from her intimate partner requires certain essential supports to allow her to transition out of that relationship in safety. The dynamics are the same: the desire of one human being to exert power and control over another. In recognizing this, we know women across Canada need an effective and responsive legal system in both the criminal justice component, where perpetrators are held accountable for their actions, and in the family law area, where officers of the court understand what domestic violence is and how to navigate this issue with a clear sense of what is before them by promoting the safety and well-being of women and her children. We know she requires trauma and violence-informed care in a safe environment where she and her children can begin to heal. And we also know that she requires the various arms of government and relevant community organizations to develop and employ effective mechanisms for collaboration so that her wishes are at the center of the process and information is shared to help enhance her safety. One example of that is the Intensive Case Management Teams, or ICAT, which originated in BC and are now being piloted in Alberta with support from the RCMP and provincial government bodies. These supports are required for women facing abuse, and that is why my first recommendation to you is to develop a national action plan for ending violence against women. The federal plan is a welcome start, but a national plan which can integrate all of these concerns and considerations into one overarching strategy is an essential part of solving this issue, and will of course have to incorporate the settlement needs of newcomer families from an intersectoral approach, which I will now address. I would like to illustrate some of these supports with a story from one of my colleagues in the Calgary Immigrant Women's Association. The story was provided to us as part of the research project we conducted to create an inventory of promising practices. This story focuses on Joanne, who was a young divorcee from India. She arrived in Canada in 2010 as a self-sponsored permanent resident. Her family in India were concerned about her marital status, and in 2012 she returned there to marry a young man. She was touched by his willingness to marry a divorcee despite cultural norms, and he came to live in Canada with her. When he arrived, he became controlling and abusive. He didn't allow her to contact her family. He monitored all her movements. She gave birth to a baby boy in 2013. Joanne hoped that this would change her husband's behavior, but in 2016, he punched her in the face in front of the child. Children's Services got involved with the family. Joanne was referred to the Family Conflict Program by her multicultural broker. When the counselor first spoke to Joanne, she was very determined to make her marriage work and not divorce again. The culturally sensitive support made it very easy for Joanne to open up to her counselor about the importance of keeping her family together. She mentioned to the counselor about the respect she has for her husband due to breaking the norm of marrying a divorcee. She knew that he needed a shift in perspective to see the impact of his behavior on their son. Joanne was very keen to receive couples counseling in their first language with someone who understood the cultural dynamics. Despite his initial reluctance to do this, Joanne's husband joined the counseling sessions to learn co-parenting skills. The counselor worked closely with them, and after a few sessions, Joanne's husband realized his mistakes. He concluded that a sense of powerlessness from the move to Canada had made him feel inferior to his wife and drove his behavior in that way. Gradually, the counseling for co-parenting focused on marital relationships.
I'm going to need to have you advance to the end. We're over time now, so if we'd like to give a conclusion.
Oh, I went way too fast there.
Yeah.
I think, well, I would then, I guess, like to really talk about my recommendations to you, which are at the end, and they are that we really do need legislative and policy change that meets Canada's international human rights obligations, prevents the separation of a mother from her children when a woman is experiencing family violence and abuse, has children who are Canadian citizens, and is being forced to leave the country, and a co-application process for couples that ensures women are aware of their rights when they arrive in Canada. We also need flexible funding models that include a national fund for women's shelters to access to address the needs of immigrant, refugee, and trafficked women. Shelters need especially trained staff to work with immigrant and trafficked women and cover the basic needs of abused women without status, as well as housing programs geared to the needs of immigrant and refugee women fleeing violence. We also need standardized programs including translation services, settlement supports with both a rural and an urban focus, and programs that increase the awareness of men with respect to the domestic violence upon themselves and their children. And finally, we need a strong national campaign against racism, anti-immigration, and Islamophobia with tools that can be shared across agencies and programs. All Canadians should have the ability to feel safe and respected in their communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I know you missed part of your presentation. If you're agreed, yeah, I will ask the clerk to consider it with your permission as a submission, and the committee will get it. Okay, thank you. We'll go to Ms. Niazi for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm here on behalf of the Afghan Women Organization, known as AWO. The mission of Afghan Women Organization is that immigrants and refugees, as well as those who have experienced war and persecution, lead self-sufficient and dignified lives in a socially inclusive society. AWO was established 28 years ago in response to the particular need of refugee Afghan women. We began by offering English and settlement programs, and after we expanded our services and the scope of our projects. Today, we serve clients from all over the world, women, men, and the children. AWO is also a sponsorship agreement holder known as SAW, and we have sponsored over 5,000 refugees from several countries in the past 3 decades. Today, thanks to our funders, IRCC and other funders, that our 4 locations at the Greater Toronto area and itinerant services in South Ontario offer access to much needed settlement services. As a sponsorship organization, AWO is the first point of contact for many refugees who arrive under the private sponsorship of refugees. This combination of our experience as a SAW and as a settlement service provider makes us extremely well positioned to assist refugees who are entering Canada through private sponsorship, government sponsorship, and also inland refugees. AWO is mainly led by the former refugee women, and over 97% of our clients are from refugee families. The AWO provides multiple culturally competent and linguistically appropriate gender-sensitive services, including one-on-one supportive counseling, orientation sessions, housing, parenting programs, employment and employment-related trainings, health and mental health services, and much more. In our service provision, we take a holistic approach and work closely with the entire family in partnership with our community partners. We usually initiate a first meeting at the homes of marginalized women, where we provide initial information. This in-home outreach enables us to encourage the women to participate in our programs in the language. Our women-only classes provide a safe and comfortable place for women who are isolated and housebound, and helps them to learn the language. It also bridges the gap and helps them to socialize and connect with the larger society. Sadly, due to lack of the funding, some women who are on our waiting list have to wait more than a year to be enrolled. And even when they are enrolled, we have to close the classes in the summer. The need of refugees, particularly refugee women, is distinct from the other immigrants. The majority of these refugees are highly skilled and they have skills of surviving. They are talented. They have amazing transferable skills and potential. They need support to utilize their potential. And underutilizations of skills of refugee women lead to a missed economic opportunity to Canada and increased dependency on social services. We are concerned that the voice of women centers are not represented at the various decision-making tables, and most notably at the National Settlement Council. There are many other challenges facing the settlement of women and refugees. Lack of adequate affordable housing for refugees, lack of adequate childminding for women, a lack of support for mental health services, lack of support to small racialized women organizations that have lost their IRCC funding, lack of access to settlement services in the rural areas and the isolated communities. Finally, this year, the government of Ontario has made a deep cut in the financial support to the refugees and immigrants, while the number of immigrants are continuing to grow in this province. We would like also to make the following recommendation. Increase support to year-round language and literacy programs for women and for all refugees. Provide adequate housing support. Provide adequate support for specialized services for women and refugees. Provide support to establish culturally competent mental health services for all women, particularly refugee women. In closing, I would like to urge you to keep in mind that if the newcomers are provided with the support that organizations like ours provide, they end up making significant positive contribution to the Canadian society, economically and socially. I would also like to say that through the soft contribution to the settlement services, it is exceptionally high standard of settlement practice to maintain during the intense period of the settlement and resettlement of the refugees. Our experience is that the privately sponsored refugees become self-sufficient sooner than the other refugees or government-sponsored refugees, because some make a contribution there of their money, their financial resources, their time, and they do great job in resettling the refugees. Thank you. I think my time is
Much. Mr. Simbalyevich, is that correct?
Correct. Thank you. Honorable Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. First, I would like to acknowledge the Algonquian Nation, whose traditional and unceded territory we are gathered upon today. Also, becoming a convention refugee in Canada, I'm broadly thankful for all the nations across Canada for allowing me to grow in this country and live on their lands. My name is Zdravko Cimbaljevic, and I was born in a small country called Montenegro on the Balkans. Little than 5 years ago, I arrived to Canada seeking protection on the grounds of sexual orientation. As the first openly gay man in my country, I started fighting for my community who needed a voice. We all needed a voice in that moment. I have managed to open the first LGBTIQ shelter in the region, and that kind of gave me the broader spectrum of what kind of settlement services even that region needs, apart from the state that are really lacking. Unfortunately, after 3 years of fighting and leading my community, I was forced to leave my country due to the hundreds of death threats, attacks, and lack of or none of state protection. Before I came out as an openly gay man, I embraced LGBTIQ2 activism as my core responsibility in human rights advocacy. I was already actively working in building education, housing, and other settlement services for Roma communities on the Balkans. I also have a broad knowledge of international settlement services I have gained at international level while working with homeless youth in UK and Venezuela. After my arrival to Canada in 2013, I started volunteering for organizations such as Rainbow Refugee and Foundation of Hope, two organizations that I admire for their incredible work in supporting LGBTIQ2 refugees and newcomers. I had a great chance to work for also settlement services in BC, such as Mosaic and Vancouver Aid Society. With the professional and personal knowledge I have gained in providing settlement services, I want to say that I'm very grateful to be here among you as an individual and as a human rights advocate, which gives me the opportunity to speak from the heart and without any political intent or interest, but as a human being who cares for others and proud resident of this great country that I call now home. While working and volunteering with LGBTIQ refugees and newcomers in Canada who are settling here, I'm happy to see settlement providers and organizations who were here today as well, social workers and field workers improving their practice and providing equity throughout their service. There are individuals who spend many of their days talking to people, spending time with those in need, in other to present them with opportunities, give emotional support, while back to back trying to improve quality of their lives in their entire process. That can be really hard sometimes, and I can tell you why. While I'm confident about people and organizations who are willing to help in running settlement programs, I'm deeply concerned about the insufficient resources these settlement services receive from provincial and federal fixed funds, not 1 year, not 3 years, but fixed funds that provide uninterrupted support to newcomers, immigrants, and refugees in getting over barriers that they may face, plus making sure that the clients go through a minimum stress on top of the stress they already have. Vancouver is my home, and it is already known that the cost of living and housing is unimaginable for many of us. A friend of mine who works as a social worker in Surrey Hospital shared a frustrating reality when it comes to referring a patient to case management in settlement services. When they call for a referral, settlement services are not able to even take names anymore for the waitlist because they're maxed out and can't provide any help. Their resources can't support any more people. Then hospital has to discharge them, their patients, and that are need for settlement services, sending them back into the community and streets without any further guidance. As already mentioned in previous speeches from other fellow colleagues, funding is paramount for organizations to be able to expand their services and provide enough help for newcomers and refugees who are already struggling to start their lives from zero, mainly for settlement services that are working in the core areas where I live and where many newcomers settle, such as Surrey, Burnaby, East Vancouver, downtown East Side, to name few. Funding for translation services that we can hear from Hannah was really helping in her first days arriving to Canada and her family. I will echo that and say that the both translation services and documentation, but also outreach and support in hospitals, schools, dentist visits, and stuff like that. We are working with newcomers and refugees who don't speak English or French, and translation services are one of the first challenges we face. Now, how can anyone know what someone needs or present what we can provide in service if there is no clear understanding on both sides? Very hard. Also, faster and streamlined logistical process that is mentioned as well previously is needed for addressing the needs of newcomers and refugees for legal, medical, and other help. Many lawyers and doctors are sometimes unable to react fast and help because of the long process with the logistical requirements. Last, there is a need for the increased support for mental health for newcomers and refugees. The adjustments are frequently far more difficult than anyone realizes, and many of us use behaviors and come from the countries and cultures where little positive attention is paid towards mental health. For example, in Montenegro, to admit that you are struggling with some mental health issues is profiling immediately as crazy, and many people hide it within their families as it is considered as an embarrassment. That culture is inheritance that's arriving with us here, and we need to show that this is not the case here. So mental health in BC definitely needs more attention than ever. We have made sure to spread the message and tell newcomers that refugees and who suffer from mental health and newcomers that it is okay. And we are collectively as a society, as a country, here to help them. As someone who is passionately involved in this work, I hope these recommendations in my statement will trigger some conversations and my points will get into consideration within this survey. I am confident that my statement will not be too far from all of the others who provided this support and to live in BC and across Canada. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're going to begin with Ms. Zahid. Again, a 5-minute round. Is that people okay with that? All right, Ms. Zahid.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to all the witnesses, and thanks for all the work which you are doing for the most vulnerable in the society. My first question is for Ms. Niazi. I want to take this moment to specially thank you for all the work which you are doing in Scarborough and the catchment area of Scarborough. You offer many services to the newcomers, and but there are certain programs you have which are specifically focused for women, and you run some women-only classes also. So I understand that newcomer women have some specific needs and they need some specific programming and support for them to be successful. So could you discuss why it is important for newcomer women to be able to receive certain services in a woman-only environment?
Because based on our experience for many years, we realized that some of the women, if it is not just because of the women-only classes and women-only programs, they would never come out of their homes. As I mentioned, there are certain women who are housebound, they won't come out, but we initiate meeting them inside their house, encouraging them, and bring them first to the women programs. But it doesn't mean that they will remain in that women, they are not segregating, they are not remaining in the women-only programs. It is the first step for them to come out of their isolation. And from these programs, they actually meet with women from different communities, from different backgrounds, because our programs are open for women from all backgrounds, like Syrians, Afghans, Iraqis, Iranians, and all. They get to know other women from other programs, and gradually, they as I mentioned, they connect with a larger society. Settlement is a process. It's not a newcomer, especially refugees, will not settle in the society overnight. They need graduate steps and layers to get, like we have to do the layers to get them into the larger society in the Canadian. And we have found that some of the women who never came out of their homes, and we encouraged them to come in the first is the blind language, and they are doing very well. There is a woman who was refugee and who was also abused, and all very young woman. She was staying at home and then come. But our programs like enabled her. Now she's working in a mental health organization as a counselor, because we encouraged them to go to school. We encouraged. She had talent. Most of these women, they are really talented. And they really need a culture broker to get them out.
Usually I see when I talk to many women in my riding of Scarborough Centre that they are the last one to think about themselves. First is their husbands trying to find some job, getting their kids into school, settling them. So majority of them are the last ones to think about themselves. Do you think that by the time they are ready to receive some settlement services, we have enough time for them that they can get all those services, or they cross those time periods?
I think as a settlement organization, not only Afghan women organization, all organizations, if they want to provide the best type of services, we have to take a holistic approach. That's what we do. Like when we work with the women, we don't isolate women from their families. Especially in the culture we are working, it doesn't happen. We work with the entire family, with the husbands, with the children, and we look after all their needs. And one of the programs, one of the needs for the newcomer women and families is the intergeneration gap, which is created when they come to a new country, because the children go to the school and they go to completely different culture and different world, and mothers and parents and all, they are not very much familiar. So if this gap is not bridged, it creates a big problem for the youth and also for the parents. Like, this is the programs we are working on. Because of the limitation of time I had to this, like working, like bridging the gap, working with the youth, and like working with their, helping them with their homework, and we also do parenting programs. All these programs involve the entire family, not isolate women from. But the first step is to take a woman also.
Many newcomers in my riding are seniors also, and many from the AF. So do you do any senior specific for the women programs?
Yes, we do. Like, actually, we had a very good program, like by province, which is unfortunately stopped. It won't continue with the seniors. With the seniors, it's good. Like, if their learning is also, like, if they have something practical and this thing. For example, we had a program for seniors. This was kitchen or cooking program that involves their learning about nutrition. They do the manual, because first of all they learn what is good for their nutritious food, how to do shopping, and how to cook. And so these are, like, they had to go for the shopping. They were escorted by the volunteers. They had to go to the grocery, know how to do the shopping, what's the better place, how to what food is like is nutritionally and healthy for them, what to take, what not. And also, like, it brought them out of their isolation. They connected with the senior women from other communities, and it was a lasting bond with this thing. They made friends. That was like one of the programs. And also we have another program for seniors, which is peer leaders. Peer leaders are like the senior volunteers. They work with a group of seniors in different communities. Like, we have one in...
I'm afraid I need to end you there.
Okay.
I know you'd go on. Mr. Jennis and Mr. McGuire.
Brief question for me, and then I'll hand it off. Thank you all for your testimony. My question's for Mr. Simbaljevic, and I apologize for butchering the pronunciation. So in 2011, former Immigration Minister Jason Kenney was involved with the launch of this Rainbow Refugee program. And I know international human rights, in particular, standing up for the rights of LGBT people facing persecution around the world, was a particular passion of his. And the model for this program is an interesting one because it uses blended sponsorship. Much of our refugee sponsorship, it comes either in the form of government sponsorship, where it's all government bringing people here, or private sponsorship, where it's a private organization and the government isn't engaged outside of administration. But this is a program where you have the government coming to the table, reducing the fiscal burden on the private sponsor, but you also have that private sponsor involved supporting the process of integration. So in a way, it makes it easier for the private sponsor to step up, but it also makes it easier potentially. So I think, innovative model put forward in 2011. Curious for your thoughts on how well the blended sponsorship model works, and if this is something we should be potentially expanding to other areas.
Thank you for mentioning that. Well, it is a model that it's quite unique around the world, and we all kind of proud of the of something that we have that in Canada, that we can privately first sponsor a refugee that not many countries or none have that citizens can sponsor privately. When it comes to blended, yes, that's true. We have that support from the government. However, private sponsorship group has to raise for one person, if they are bringing and sponsoring one person, at least $20,000. They have to raise 70% of funds to provide to literally government, saying we have 70% of these funds, in order for government even to start the process. There's a lot of kind of timeline there. It's not like you have the group and then suddenly the refugee comes here. It's the process where there's lots of work while still someone waits in the camp or waits in some kind of shadow to be rescued. When it comes to that support, it does have the support, but as you know, very limited support. That kind of I think housing, when it comes to housing, there's a certain amount that the government provides for the furniture and for maybe 3 months of 12 months that a refugee is provided to be in Canada for the first year of their stay, to be supported from this group and the government. However, nothing happens after a year. It's not like someone can really be settled in a year fully.
I'm just going to jump in to hand it over to my colleague, but I guess what you're saying is, it's great that the government came to the table, but from your perspective, they could ideally give more, but I will say it's more than exists in other contexts for private sponsorship. But I'll hand it over to my colleague now.
Good, thank you. Thanks to my colleague as well. So, just a question for you as well in regards to, since you've come to Canada, you've been here for 5 years, I believe you indicated. Have you been able to continue to do any work and development back in Montenegro? And what have you been able to accomplish in the Balkans since you left?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm still connected to my country because my whole family is there. I'm the only one that left the country, so I'm connected when it comes to from that point, but also from the activism point. I think my leaving country also spiked a little bit of other types of activism, that more people came out in the rage of that the only person who was out had to leave, and internationally I think triggered this talk, let's say. I am involved, not more now internationally because I'm here. I cannot be there locally to support my community and colleagues who I kind of left behind. But I'm very much involved and giving support whenever I can, especially in the region, because the whole region is kind of almost similar.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Reimer, you indicated that there was an assessing level of danger with a particular name that you used there, this Campbell. Can I just get that group from you again? Whoop. Or miss, I didn't get any connection there.
Dr. Jacqueline from John Hopkins.
Okay, and that 2/3 of the persons coming in were at risk of being killed. Is that?
That's right.
Can you expand on that? Or is there?
Yes. Well, it really illustrates how women really need shelters, and that there is that risk of them being killed. So that's why they're there, and they need that security.
So just on the planning, then you mentioned something about to develop a national action plan. You said there was already I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, a developed federal plan. Was there a difference between the federal and national, or?
The federal plan, as I understand it, is that it addresses federal departments. It's not national. So for where women live, it's a postal code lottery in terms of the services they get and the responses they get to domestic violence.
I'm afraid I need to end it there. Madame Laverdière.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank all the witnesses for your presentations. I'll just give you a chance to put the earpiece on if you need the interpretation. Something that struck me in all three presentations was the lack of resources, the lack of capacity, the lack of funding. Mr. Simbalovic, you talked not only about the lack of funding, but also the model of funding that doesn't always provide stability and predictability that are required. I was wondering if you see the same problem, Ms. Niadzi. Do you often find that the funding is too short term for your programs and activities, or the form of funding you obtain, does it correspond to your needs, or would there be possible improvements?
Yeah, actually, we are receiving funding from 3 levels of the government and also some other funders, foundations, and others. The major funding comes from IRCC, And one of the type of funding excludes refugee claimants and citizens because they are not eligible for those funding. So that is like when the claimants come here, the first stage, if they miss that opportunity to receive the services, so that will be very difficult for them to catch up later at this thing. So this is all of the provinces funding, but that's a very small funding. And also like my friend mentioned, the duration of funding for IRCC is like 3 years, and it's a huge application. It's a lot of work doing that. So there's no core funding available for that. If there is some core funding available for organizations such as us and other settlement workers, it will build their capacity and also give some peace of mind with that. And also there's uncertainty. Like you don't know what happens like in the end of the funding circle.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Simbalovich, I am the proud representative of Laurier Sainte-Marie riding in Montreal, in which one finds the village. Our community has been enriched by many members of the LGBT community who come and live with us in Montreal, and who often do indeed come from very difficult circumstances. I have a double question for you very quickly, a question that doesn't directly deal with this subject, but I know that there are many difficulties for those requesting refugee status because of their sexual orientation. Often they don't have access to the refugee High Commission because they're not necessarily living in a war-torn country or in a country in crisis, so it's much more difficult to apply for refugee status. If you have any comments on that, I'd like to hear them. And also, I'd like to know whether you think we need special programs for LGBTQ plus communities.
I do believe that when it comes to LGBTIQ cases, every case is individual and it's very personal, and it's every claim has to be its own, and that's the part where mentioning countries and their reports of progress on LGBTIQ rights can be very questionable. Because we have, Canadian international reports, U.S. Department of State reports, where they can mention that, pride happened in this country, and then suddenly, Refugee Immigration Board member can take that as a positive development, saying, "But look, it's safe in your country. Yeah. You had a pride last year." Pride doesn't represent stability in the country. Pride represents fight for the LGBTIQ community, and that cannot be measurable as a progress in the country. The progress in the country is the protection of human rights in the country when it comes to judiciary, when it comes to law, when it comes to police department. Like any first contact, the citizen is confident to approach if their rights are violated. If they're not, then that should be measured to take as a refugee immigration board. When it comes to camps and people who are outside of Canada, not inside of Canada, that's a totally different story with the UNHCR and IOM, how they process these cases, and of course locals who work for these agencies can also push away these cases because they can also be homophobic or transphobic in those cases. So there's lots of things that is streamlined, that every case is an individual case, and the country shouldn't be only and the reports on those human rights reports shouldn't be just seen bluntly as a proof. Yeah, thank you.
Jamie, and 5. Well, you get 6 because everyone else had 6. 5 is 6 at this committee.
Thank you all for coming and giving us insight into the various programs you have. I'll begin by Mr. Simbaljevic. This committee's kind of heard several times about people who've identified as LGBTQ plus and are often persecuted and must flee their homeland, sometimes very quickly. What are the specific needs of refugees who are LGBTQ plus that are maybe different from other refugees that we are traditionally accustomed to? And in follow-up, I'll just tell you, if you could also say which ones we haven't addressed, perhaps, and which ones are being addressed, needs.
What I will, because of the time, I will maybe just focus on one particular group of the LGBTIQ, and that's the trans community inside the LGBTIQ refugee process, and the newcomers who are coming, but definitely refugee claimants who are going through or been through sex reassignment process or are wanted to go through it. I think there's a lack of services there when someone who is coming from Iran, for example, or countries that even being just closeted gay is not allowed, where you have a transgender person who cannot really hide it. They want to show that they are belonging to a different gender, that gender they feel. So they, I think that community has to have a much larger, how to say, attention, much larger attention on the process, because there's a language barrier. There's medications that they have to receive immediately after arriving to Canada, where as a claimant,
So are you saying they probably need more specialized social worker type training?
Exactly.
Or psychologist type?
I believe soon as they start their process as a refugee claimant, that should be flagged as someone who doesn't have to wait to be accepted in order to get the medical support from the government or the benefits, because they have to wait until the hearing. And now, because as we all know, all the hearings are postponed, there's no much of a promise that hearing will happen that day, because of all the cases are coming in. Then they have to also postpone their medical treatment, their hormonal treatment and stuff like that. I believe that as soon as the person is profiled as a refugee claimant who is a trans person, they should be allowed to get the medical treatment with their hormones and hormone therapy immediately, and not wait for the hearing, because that can also reflect on the mental health and everything else when it comes to settlement services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Niazi, you deal with a lot of immigrants, specifically from, say, Afghanistan, and where gender equality may not be always the strongest, especially from rural areas. How do you think settlement services differ from men and women when they're newcomers?
Settlement services are different for women.
Yeah, how do you think they differ for men versus women from the same regions, and how can we cater them better to help women in particular, and then also men get the services they need?
Yeah, actually, because I see the women's need very special, distinct from the men needs. We are actually not working only with the Afghan, as I mentioned. We are working with the refugees from other countries, like lots of Syrians, Iraqis in Iran, from Iran and other places as well. And also there is some the lack of support they got back in their country. I don't say that I don't put it as a culture, but because they have gone through the war and violence, and they have gone through the losses in their lives. And women has more responsibility. They have to look after their children. They have to do the house chore, and they have more responsibilities. And also some of the women, because of the war and because of this thing, they feel threatened, and they don't want to. I mean, somehow they prefer to be housebound and don't come. They need more encouragement. And also some abuse happens everywhere. But because of the lack of system in the countries where there are war going on and where the culture of war, they haven't received the support for the abused women, and somehow they have internalized it, and because of many factors, they don't talk about that. So they need more encouragement to open into, like, abuse is a taboo in most of the communities. They need more encouragement to talk about if there is violence and abuse against them at the family, more information and more support.
And what tools have been effective that you found to encourage those that are abused to come out more and get the benefit of settlement services?
The first thing is to establish a rapport and trust between the settlement worker and between them. Mostly if the settlement worker comes from their similar background, and their sensitivity on the services, and not push them, and allow them to open it. That works a lot. And usually it stops with one-on-one counseling, and also with the small group supports between the women who have gone through those violence and through to similar difficulties. If there are support groups and they open, and you'll see that they are not alone, and everybody talks about that. From there, then the information is provided, and also they are given a choice to have an informed decision what they want to do. And something which, like with the immigrant woman and with the refugee from other countries, like it was mentioned before, the solution for their problem is not just separation. We have to work with the entire family. We usually work with the entire family, with the husband, with the children, and all, to reconcile and also this thing. We also have separate workshops and programs for men, because when we work on the issues of violence and the other special need of the woman, the men has to be involved. So we do that as well.
I think we need to end there. I want to thank the witnesses, and again, I apologize for the somewhat shorter meeting than usual due to the vote, but thank you for your time and your testimony. And if any of you have anything by way of specific recommendations you want to submit to the committee, please do so in writing, and if you have friends who want to do that, please let them know as well. The meeting's adjourned.